Hi everyone, my name's Andrew Patterson, and this is my capstone presentation. It's called To Bubble or Not to Bubble? That is the question. Now, my job is really quite confusing to most people when I initially tell them what I do. I work for one company, but that company manages another facility that's run by another company. It's pretty daunting to go through the gauntlet of trying to explain each and every aspect, but I'll do my best. I work at a facility that is owned by the local HOA, so the Homeowners Association. However, it is run by my gym management company that they have hired out to oversee facility operations, ensure that quality is still there, make sure that programming is up to par. So we're kind of the butler, so to speak. So we run every single program throughout the Ashburn Village Sports Pavilion, whether that's swim programming, which I'm personally in charge of, or gym management, or fitness, or exercise, whatever. We run everything. But everything is owned by the HOA, so it is really confusing. Now, as I alluded to a little bit earlier, I'm the director of swim programming, and I'm also the head of the swim lessons and the developmental swim team. I also work for the swim team, which is owned by the HOA, so that's another conversation in and of itself. But the HOA runs our local swim team, which has over 350 swimmers, and the developmental swim team, which I run for my company, has over 150 swimmers. Now, the two teams often find themselves jockeying for pool space because we have a 6-lane indoor pool. It's 5 feet to 3 feet, but we always have to keep one lane open for lap swimmers and one lane open for community members who want to come in with their grandkids or their kids or whatever and just swim. So we always have to keep 2 lanes open. So that means there's only 4 lanes to accommodate over 500 kids. So as you can imagine, it gets pretty crazy. Now, the two teams find themselves kind of in arguing capacity a lot of the time, and it's led to a lack of cohesiveness, which has prompted me to highlight the overall issue in my capstone proposal. Throughout this proposal, I will depict how I will convince the HOA board and the managing company to help give the necessary funding in order to allow us to expand both programs so everyone can benefit, from the HOA and my company, WTS, to the swim team and the developmental swim team and the swimmers and the community in and of itself as well. Now, my first appeal is going to be through logos. I believe that the swim team needs to expand in order to be more competitive. We're in an area with multiple other swim teams. One swim team has 5,000 kids on it. 5,000 kids. And we have 350. So as you can imagine, we do have that small town family feel, but we also need to expand because you have to adapt or die, so to speak. So I think through logos and logic, we can view that in our current setting, it kind of doesn't allow the swim team or the developmental swim team to grow. I believe it is necessary for us to bubble one of our 4 outdoor pools because we can utilize that space year-round, thus allowing more space for swim lessons, a developmental swim team, a competitive swim team, whatever. Now, the logical side of this is that we have the space, and it was built to be used year-round. We have an outdoor pool that all you have to do is take one of those tennis bubbles, which you've seen, and simply zip it in and put it over the pool, and it's good. It's good to go. So if we have that space, it would make sense to use it, which is where logos comes in. I also plan on using invitational rhetoric in order to convince both entities to see the potential that I see. It is a large monetary commitment. I'm not going to lie. It's over $700,000 to get a heater and a bubble and ensure that everything's, ventilated and aeration and everything else. But you'll make that money back. And I believe that this commitment needs to be made because there's human nature perspectives. If this project could benefit anyone's kids, let alone their own, wouldn't you want to do that? Both in the short term and the long term. Because in the future, aren't kids a worthwhile investment? Now, upon my presentation of these ideas, I will use pathos, because I know most of the members of the HOA board, as well as the higher-ups of my company. Many of them have children. Almost all of them have children. And I would point to the fact that our swim programs have 30-plus kids on the wait list, waiting to learn how to swim or get better or swim competitively. But we simply can't accommodate them because we don't have the space. I would ask them to imagine that if one of these children on the wait list were one of their kids, wouldn't they want the team to expand, and wouldn't they want us to bubble the outdoor pool to allow a spot for those kids? So what makes these kids that are waiting right now any different? Other than, obviously, there's the emotional side of it because it's your child, but don't you want to help children in general? Now, this approach would also help the two managing entities feel a sense of identification to the cause. And this isn't a bad thing. They would learn what is truly at stake and what we could do to help. And that's a good thing. Now, my next step will be to share how the process will work. Most of the managers know roughly how this goes because they have a similar bubbling plan for our outdoor tennis courts, which now have a bubble. They're open year-round, but they take the bubble down in May, similar to what I was planning on us doing with our swim program. We put a bubble up in probably September, and we go from September to May with the bubble up, and then once it gets warm enough, we take the bubble down, and we can use the outdoor pools as they were initially used. Now, this will work to my advantage as I try to attempt to convince all of them through the use of narrative paradigm. Now, I believe my greatest asset in all of this will be coherence. My potential listeners have seen the dramatic improvements that bubbling our outdoor tennis courts have made during the year, both through the success of our program, but also through the fiscal reports. The tennis program has doubled in size, which also means it doubled in revenue. So it went from a $500,000 a year earner to over $1 million in its first year, and that's still growing. We could do at least that with our swim program, if not more. Now, I've made a similar plan, and I believe bubbling the pool would be an even more lucrative endeavor. Ultimately, I believe that one of the biggest assets is that even though my listeners will undoubtedly use the dual process model, evaluation, debate, wondering if it's really the right thing to do, any way you slice it, this can be a money-making endeavor. And with any business, the ultimate goal is the bottom line. Now, I understand that through the use of the elaboration likelihood model, I can be even more successful. Through plenty of information, for instance, the overall cost will be $763,000, not a small amount of money, and not pocket change. I can make sure that my listeners can process it both centrally and peripherally. Ultimately, they're going to look at it and go, $763,000. That's a lot of money. But I hope to steer them away from that direct route, more towards the peripheral route of, sure, that's a lot of money. How do we get there? What do we get out of it? And ultimately, once we've put in this investment, how long will it take to recoup the losses? But also, what can we see at the end? Because ultimately, if you show someone a light at the end of the tunnel, they'll tend to go for it, usually. Now, I can make sure that my listeners process it the way I want by displaying all the facts. For instance, the cost of implementation is significant, but when you consider the swim team can add at minimum 40 swimmers, and each swimmer pays $3,000 a season to be on the team, simply by expanding the swim team, you can pay back the amount of the structure in 7 years. If you do the math, it's 40 swimmers times 3. It's $120,000 times 7. You've paid it back with some interest. Now, this doesn't take into account that we can double the size of our swim lesson program, which already generates $30,000 every 6 weeks. So if we double that, $60,000 every 6 weeks, and we do a 35-week session, you can do the math. So we've paid for the bubble in a little less than 4 years if you take some profits, not all profits, but some profits from both programs. Now, my next step would be to instill the theory of reasoned action in my listeners and in the board and the HOA. I am incredibly passionate about our swim programs because I truly believe that they are the best in Northern Virginia where we operate. Now, I want our programs to impact not just children, but the community as much as possible. And I believe that through the expansion of our program, we can be an even bigger part of the community and the surrounding area. I believe that through the emphasis of community cohesiveness, as well as a high profit margin and a huge increase in our bottom line, I can persuade my listeners to strongly consider the financial undertaking that will be required to implement such a huge project. I also believe that cause and effect will be at play once this project is finished. To quote the movie Field of Dreams, I truly believe that if we build it, they will come. And by they, I mean customers. We will have more space to allow for more swimmers, and we are already seen as one of the top programs in the area, both developmental swim team wise, normal swim team, swim lessons, and swim programming in general. We're seen as one of the top dogs. So if we can offer even more space, we'll get even more clientele, which means profits for everyone, but kids also benefit, families benefit, and the community benefits, which is a benefit. Now, all in all, I believe that this helps us stay not only relevant, but also competitive. There are plenty of other pools in our area, and what sets us apart is our quality of swim programs. We're able to offer a great product at a competitive price, but we also have some of the best staff around. And that's not just me being cocky. We've been reviewed by multiple sources, and they've said how our instructors truly take a vested interest in each and every kid. And that's something I really pride myself on. I want to expand that. I don't want to lose the quality, but I do want to increase the quantity. Now, I plan on using Packard's compelling needs, specifically the need for wealth and power, and also the need for love and acceptance. I hope that by appealing to the HOA and the management company's need for wealth, right? They always want to make a profit, that hopefully they'll look at this and decide that why wouldn't we do this? Sure, it's an investment, but it can pay huge dividends in the long run. And it also gives them power because they'll be an even bigger player in the community, which is a great thing. Now, the need for love and acceptance I plan on utilizing by stating we can help kids. Everyone loves kids. Despite people who say, I don't love kids. Everyone loves kids. So if we can help children and keep them in our program, why wouldn't we? If these were their kids, I'm sure they'd want everything possible done in order to accommodate them. So why stop there? I'm sure their kids know some of these kids. Let's help them. Now, this project can make both parties a lot of money, obviously. And ultimately, it'll make us one of the big players in the area. But we can also help our community and help our HOA residents because they'll have more space and more opportunity for their kids and grandkids to take programming, which is a good thing. Now, I will try and use an ad populum argument to my advantage as well by stating that, as you all know, our community wants a bigger, better program. By stating our community in general, it makes them think that this is in high demand, which it is, but it also makes them feel like there's kind of a mob mentality. These people are breaking down the doors for this. Why not give it to them? And as the HOA is an elected majority, I would think they want as much of the populace on their side as possible. Now, but I believe that about 50% of our community could care less about the program one way or another. I won't say that, but in order to sell my idea, I need to convince the two voting parties that the populace in a whole wants a bigger, better program. Now, my next appeal will be to convince the voting parties that implementing This plan would behoove them because it would display them as a benevolent community, with the people of the community's best interest at heart. Now, through building this structure, it would also allow community members, older patrons, and younger families access to more pool space because we would allow the swim team to go into the bubbled area, which would leave 2 additional lanes for all these families and older people to use. Now, through the implementation of this plan, the HOA board and managing company would put the value of the individual and the community at the forefront of their decision, which once again, as the HOA is a voting majority, I think this would be huge. Now, although this campaign ultimately could have a political repercussion, HOA members could win re-election or lose re-election based on its success. It is more of a product-based campaign. What I mean by that is we're building a bubble, so to speak, and we are making a product better and making a profit out of it as well. Now, although the hierarchy of effects model from Yale's is at play here, the 2 voting parties do have a rough idea of the process based upon their aforementioned dealings with a similar process through the bubbling of our tennis courts. This is very similar, and though it's not identical, the hierarchy is still applicable. We are attempting to update and glitz up our swim program and keep it relevant and allowing our product to make the most impact and make it a premier destination in the area for swim teams, swim lessons, and developmental swim team. Now, through the marketing of potential advertising space on the top of the bubble, on the sides of the bubble, and inside our bubble, we could also offset some of the costs, as well as potentially get companies to donate products and services and discounts to our swimmers, swim students, families, and patrons. I would also market the idea that they will be the first, so the Trout and Rees model, and the best program. They will be the first in the area to have a bubbled outdoor swimming pool, and they will continue their programming the same way which it already is known as the best in Ashburn. I believe that this phrase, adapt or die, is truly applicable here, simply because there is a huge desire among our community and team to become better, bigger, and ultimately more relevant. I believe this falls under Val's segmentation of being a need. It's truly a need. It's wanted, but it's also needed because our swim team is struggling. We have 30 plus kids on the wait list. We have 30 plus kids on the wait list for swim lessons and developmental swim team. We could build up the program, but we have to have the space to do it. Now, we simply don't have the space right now to accomplish everything and all of the tasks that we want. It's not ideal. So this would allow our programming to grow, and through building this bubble, we can expand to help everyone in the community and help satisfy a need among all of our patrons. I will finish this pitch by displaying Monroe's motivated sequence. I plan on grabbing the attention of the voting parties by showing customer satisfaction surveys, which are through the roof, while also showing our current profit margins. I'll show them how much money we can make, but also how happy that people are with the limited program we're able to offer right now. So if we can expand it, not only will more people be happy, but there will also be more profits to go around, which is never a bad thing. I will then proceed to show customer and community member comment cards about how we need more space and more room to operate, whether it's people coming in simply to swim in a lap lane or people coming in for swim lessons or developmental swim team. They want the room, so why not give it to them? I will then follow that up by showing how through the implementation of my bubble plan, we can satisfy this need that I alluded to earlier that many in the community have voiced. By giving more space, we are allowing the swim team to move to a bigger facility so they can grow. And then we're splitting the space we have right now between swim lessons and developmental swim team, but also members. So there's more space for kids to play and have fun, but there's also more space for swim lessons and swim programming. So everybody gets to grow. Now, I will follow that up with rough mock-ups of what the bubble will look like with advertising and without, while also showing that this will affect our program's numbers and profit margins, thus helping everyone to visualize the end goal. I'm a very visual person, so if I got to see a bubble, see what the pool would look like, basically a digital layout, and then see advertising on the outside, but also advertising on the inside, and what the bubble would look like with and without that advertising, it would make a huge impact on me because I get to see what it looks like. I get to kind of put an image with the imagery that's been displayed, which is never a bad thing. Visually pleasing is always something that benefits the parties and the listeners. Now, finally, I will finish my pitch by fielding any questions and then making a call to action, showing that we have the opportunity to capitalize on a successful program, but we also have the opportunity to make it better. But we must act in order to do so. I will then ask for the board and management company to vote on the implementation of this plan. Before they vote, I plan on asking, what if these were your kids? What would you want done? Or what if these were your grandkids? Wouldn't you want everything done to accommodate them? I'm hoping the answer is yes, and I'm assuming it will be. Finally, I plan on showing them all what can be made out of this program. So not only do we allow the program to expand, more kids to learn, more kids to benefit, and that could last 20, 30, 40 years, but we also make a profit. So you benefit on both sides. Cui bono, every party involved benefits. So ultimately, I believe this will be a successful endeavor. Sure, initially it's expensive. It is. $763,000 is no small sum of money. But when you consider we're making $120,000 additional dollars a year just off added swimmers to the swim team, and then you couple that with another, $180,000 minimum just from swim lessons, you can pay that money back in a short term, along with sponsorships and gratuities, but also grants. You can pay back that money even quicker. So, huge amount of money in the initial, but also a huge benefit at the end. I don't know why you would turn that down, and I hope they won't either. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed.